once again, I'd like to welcome everybody back once again to another episode of historical content right here on the Buffalo History Channel. Thank you for supporting our fall-winter 2023 season, which is in high gear. Thank you for your continued support. Got another good one for you tonight. You've seen this gentleman here with me a few times before, most recently at the top of this year, where we did a deep dive into his efforts to bring the Bills Stadium back to the city of Buffalo. And that video has gotten a lot of hits. It's been aired over on YouTube, also on the Facebook platforms as well. It's got many views and a lot of feedback. It's up there on the Buffalo History Channel, still available for everyone to watch. Now, I also had this gentleman on when he talked about a number of his interviews in his book, The Art of the Interviews. And we're going to be focusing on a particular interview that he did that we actually did not talk about in the last video. But before we get into that, I want to once again welcome back to the Buffalo History Channel, the one and only, the Mighty O'ba himself, Patrick Freeman. Pat, welcome back to the Buffalo History Channel.
Pleasure to be with you, Doug. Thank you for having me back on the Buffalo History Channel. You're doing some great work.
Absolutely, man. We're doing the best we can over here. Now, one of the interviews that you did, and I remember when you did, to me is one of your most compelling videos, was with that of Donald Sly Green. Everybody in Buffalo knows that name very well. And to many, it was a name throughout the community that did strike a bit of fear into a lot of people. And when I remember when you told me that you were going to be, many years ago, I think like 7 years ago or so, when you were going to interview him, I was surprised to hear it. And I said, definitely let me know when that interview was up. I had a chance to hear that interview back in the day. And even for me, it was, I found it to be very interesting. I mean, I didn't know a great deal about him myself. I knew him by name, but after hearing your interview, I was just really intrigued by it. I actually learned a lot about the brother.
Yeah.
When anybody that's watched that interview, if you looked at him one way, it'll definitely make you look at him in a completely different light. And it's a very compelling story. And we talked about him, Pat and I talked about doing another deep dive here. And I think that would be this would be a really good subject to do another deep dive on. And we're going to have some clips from the interview in case anybody missed it. Because I mean, you can go on Pat's YouTube channel and find that whole it was a two-part interview. We're going to deal with part one of the video. Okay. But let me first start off, for starters, Pat. Talk to us about, well, first of all, when did you do that interview?
Well, the interview occurred really in January of 2016, and it took about a year to put it together.
Okay.
Donald,
what made you want to do the interview first?
You know, I saw a story that was printed in a magazine about street criminals, and I said it would be very interesting to hear what he had to say from his viewpoint. And he said he never got an opportunity to give his side of the story. So I said, try to reach out to him and see what happens. So I went through the correction system in which you can communicate with people that are incarcerated. And he answered me back. And he said he would be interested in doing the interview. And at the time I was at WFO, and I went to Miss Sheila Brown, and then Bobby Wonder was the program director at the time. And they were interested in me doing the interview. and Dwayne Price did the editing and the music for the interview, and I thank all three of them for helping to make it possible. But it took about a year of us going back and forth with each other through the mail, putting together an interview that would not affect his appeal process too. I thought that was important, that I did not ask a question that would interfere with his ability to appeal his sentence, because you know he got four life sentences and
Right.
135 years,
Right.
and he feels he's going to still get out. He's been incarcerated for, I believe, over 30 years now. And it took about a year to put that together, Doug. It was a pretty big project, took a lot of dedication. As you know, in this field, sometimes it's more dedication than financial reward. And
True.
certainly a project like that was of more dedication than financial reward. We're not in this necessarily to make money. You'd like to make money, but it ended up being probably, I got so many hits and comments when I put the interview up. People were inboxing me, emailing me from all over. And it was probably my most popular work that I've ever done because of the nature of the interview and who I was interviewing.
Definitely. Definitely. So what was it like to first connect with him?
I was surprised. He's a very, very intelligent person,
Mhm.
and I thought we hit it off. I mean, you figure we started communicating and putting the interview together for about a year in
Mhm.
2015,
Right.
and we have stayed in touch pretty much so since then. I mean, I get an email from him, and I'll email him to see how he's doing. And I think it's my duty to always try to uplift the human
Right.
spirit, no matter what. I mean, each one
Absolutely.
of us have done wrong in our lives. Nobody has lived a perfect life,
True.
and a lot of people. I took a lot of criticism from some people for doing the interview, but I tried to explain to them that a lot of Charles Manson was interviewed. People got
Yeah.
on the interviewer for that. I don't
Yeah.
see him in under that light. And my relationship with him was professional, but we have stayed in touch. I think it's an obligation that we have when we interview people. As you know, you do become personally involved with that person. You
Right.
learn a lot about that person, and you become friends of some sort with almost every person you interview because you dive into their inner spirit. You want to bring that out, and that is the real art of the interview itself, is doing that. And we certainly tried to do that during the course of the interview. And, I just think I started a friendship with him, and we've stayed in touch just about for the last 8 years. And most of my conversations with him are, how you're doing. He's locked down in the Florida federal penitentiary, and you hear that recording throughout the interview. And
Right.
that was the thing too, Doug, that the rule is you can only do 15 minutes. This interview was 2 hours. So you could do
Wow.
15 minutes, then you had to wait 45 minutes. So it took me almost 8 hours to complete this interview because
Wow.
you had to do 15 minutes. It gave you a warning, and then you had to wait. He couldn't get back on the line for another 45 minutes at a time. So he'd do 15, wait 45, do 15, wait 45. And that's how we ended up doing the interview once we put it together. So it was a big challenge, but it was a great challenge and a very rewarding one because I've never interviewed anyone like that with that type of background. And I think I got to know him pretty well. I got to know he's got a very good younger sister that looks after him, and I consider her a friend also because I don't think people realize in media we get very close to the people we're talking to, and these people become part of us. When you interview a person, you try to dive into them. And in doing so, you become connected to this person. And that's how that really started. And I know, people have had, various experiences with different people, and especially with him. And I understand that. But my experience with him started with the interview and has continued today.
Okay, we're going to share a few clips from the interview, and as I said, we'll let you know where you can see the interview in its entirety at. Wanted to is there any particular spots that you would want to hit upon with some of the interview?
Well, we started, I first wanted to ask him how he got into the street life, and he
Okay,
called it the hustle game.
the hustle game.
And he started talking about his brother Iceberg and his aunt that was a prostitute, and that's how he kind of started in this thing called the hustle game,
Okay,
which led to him becoming what he called street poison.
okay,
And I asked him a lot about street poison and how he became street poison and how he became part of the streets, he began loving the streets, and the streets became part of him and it became part of his life.
okay.
And that's how he got to where he was today. So that was the beginning of the interview, and then we tried to tackle how he got to prison and why he ended up uh, being incarcerated. Because he was incarcerated first
Mhm.
under state charges, and then he was incarcerated under the federal charges. So it became a learning experience,
Yeah,
and to
definitely.
see what he went through. Um, he was said to be the Black Godfather, one of the biggest crime. He was said to be the biggest black crime boss on the street, which he refutes. And he said, I never was that.
Okay,
They made me bigger than I could have ever been.
okay,
And during the course of the interview, we tried to take it stage by stage on how he got to where he is today. And it was a great learning experience. Every interview I've ever had, but this one in particular, because of the nature of the background, was probably one of my most challenging, but also one of my most rewarding.
okay. Well, let's take a listen to the part of how he got into the hustle game.
Want to start by asking you, how did you get involved in what you call the hustle game?
I got involved in the hustle game when I was about 12 years old at a very young age. And I have like 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And my oldest brother was the vice president of a local street gang called Cold Spring Manhattan Lovers. His name was Iceberg. And I had another brother by the name of Gary and another brother by the name of Ronnie, The other brother was too really young to understand what was going on. And what my brother would do, the rest.
This call is from a federal prison.
Me and my other brothers would follow my older brother Iceberg and whatever he done. Now, like I said, at the time I was like 12. My other brother was like, Ronnie was like 11, and Gary, he was like 13 at the time. And so when my brother became a vice president of a gang, then me and my other little brothers would follow behind him, and we would get in the gang. And so as time went on, probably about a year or two as that went on, my brother stopped being in the gang, and he became a hustler. He started hustling in the streets, selling drugs. So he would give me a number like 1 and 1, my other little brother a number 2 and 2, and then Ronnie a number 3 and 3. So if he said 1 and 1, that meant bringing 1 bundle of dope. If he said 2 and 2, that meant bringing 2 bundles of dope from Gary or Ronnie. If he said 3 and 3, that meant Ronnie are bringing 3 bundles of dope. So he stopped being a gang leader. He started being a drug dealer. So as time went on, then he started hustling. He started having girlfriends, and he became a pimp.
I was going to say that one of the things that when he mentioned his gang life and being part of the Manhattan Lovers, I'm always reminded of when I found that one film of the back in 1995 when I was going through stuff with the Build organization and with that documentary, and finding that video of the street gangs when they all came together in that truce with the New Visions Unlimited. And once I put that out there, throughout the years I've met many people part of all the different gangs, and that have all gone in different directions. Many have gone in different directions. They've been in high places, they've been mid-level places, but anytime somebody mentions that, it's always, because there's always, everybody has a story about gang life in Buffalo, particularly back at that time.
Yeah, the Manhattan Lovers, I was pretty young during that time frame, and you had better been careful where you went in certain parts of
so I've heard
city. And you didn't want to get caught somewhere where you did not belong. And when he mentioned those names, some of them are legendary. His brother was legendary too, and he was legendary. And when he started talking about his lifestyle, when you're brought up in that type of lifestyle, it can really, really affect your outcomes. And this is where he said he became involved in the street. He began to love the street, and the street became part of him. And that was what he termed as the hustle game, and he became what he called street poison. And it's a compelling story.
Yeah, and we have this part right here about the street poison. We'll take a listen to it.
When did you become what you call street poison?
I became street poison because I like what I saw inside the streets. I admire what I saw inside the streets. I became the streets, and by me being around my aunt and by me being around my older brother, I love the streets. I love what I seen in the streets. And so I began to live in the streets and skip school and, be around my aunt or try to hang around my older brother. And I just became fascinated with the streets because of what the streets represented and what I seen in the streets, and through my aunt and my older brother. And my brother was like a local legend at that time in the streets. He made a lot of money. He stayed very well dressed. And, we just wanted to be like our brother. Me and my little younger brothers, we seen what he done, and we just followed behind him, and we wanted to be like him. And so we followed behind him. And everything he did, we tried to emulate and we tried to do. So I became street poison.
Yeah, he put it out there, and I began to have an understanding of how he got to where he is today. But it also, with that being said, it just you have an understanding of you know our experience in this country and how uh, segments of our community get caught up in these lifestyles. And if anyone familiar with Buffalo back in the day, you can easily see how you can get caught up in any type of lifestyle um, that is related to the street, because there's a lot of guys that got caught up into that, lost their lives or in prison. Um, and that's where he is today. Sly is uh, in prison and he's trying to get out. He's trying to gain his freedom himself. And basically, he explained what made him get to the point that he was so entrenched in what we call street life and that particular lifestyle. And I found it very, very interesting and intriguing. But I also realized too that any one of us, if you are totally surrounded in that lifestyle, and that's your beginning, and people you look up to and people you take care of are part of that lifestyle, it is very, very easy for you to become what he termed as street poison. And he really uh, loved the streets and he became part of the streets.
I want to jump ahead to his first charges, and certainly to the one thing that really had me really compelled me a lot was just how he became a jailhouse lawyer. I think that is a very, very intriguing part of his story. So we'll go back to the shared screen and say.
Now, Sly, eventually this led to you being charged with certain violations of law.
Yes.
Can you just tell me about those, and how did those come into being, what those laws were?
Okay, as I grew older, I got charged. First, I got charged with some guys killed my little brother. So I got charged with the murder of some of the guys that killed my little brother. I went to trial. I proceeded to trial, so I got convicted, and I received 25 to life for the state of New York. And then, about 18 months later, I go on trial for the feds with a 73-count indictment with 32 co-defendants from various cities and states, with a few, 2 Colombians and a guy from another country. I go on trial. They put me on top of the indictment, and they accuse me of being the boss, the crime boss, the godfather.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when you start listening, you're like, man, 25 to life. And uh, the accused charges that he was accused of, and then he was labeled as the crime boss. And I never, our job as interviewers, Doug, as you know,
Right.
is we're not trying to interject our opinions, our
Right.
thoughts.
Of course.
We're trying to pull that information out of him so it can better help our constituency that's listening, that's hearing that interview. And I just felt that we were on the right track. It was just incredible, man. I had so many people, Doug, asking me for copies of that interview so they could play them for young people in the city to make sure that they didn't get caught up in what happened to Donald Sly Green. Because, like you mentioned before, no one can question his level of intelligence. This is a very, very smart young man, and he became probably the most successful jailhouse lawyer in the history of this country. And he began to explain how he became a jailhouse lawyer. He realized, if I'm either going to continue to be part of street life in prison, or I'm going to fight for my own freedom, because no lawyer is going to do that. I mean, funding attorneys from behind prison walls is almost impossible. So he educated himself for 6 years and became one of the most successful jailhouse lawyers in the history of this country. Even has recorded, through his sister, she wrote a book on his behalf about his story of being a jailhouse attorney and how successful he's been. But he said, man, when he got to Leavenworth, and people, you hear those names, and we only hear them on TV or you read about them.
Right.
But he said, man, when those prison doors closed, he realized where he was. And you either join the problem that got you there, or you begin fighting for your life. And that's what he's done. But in doing that, he has helped a lot of people gain their freedom. At the time of the interview, over 166 cases won.
Well, let's take a listen. Let's take a listen to that right now.
Sly, I want to ask you, how many cases have you had thrown out successfully since you've really become active as a jailhouse lawyer?
Okay, I've won 166 cases and 5 Supreme Court cases.
Wow.
That's how many I've won thus far within the last 25 years that I was incarcerated. But like I told you, it took me 6 years to learn the law, because the only way I felt that I would ever be free, or that I would ever be able to gain my freedom or cut the sentence down, is that I had to learn the law based on what the guy told me 25 years ago while I was in Leavenworth Federal United States Penitentiary, and this guy was from St. Louis, and he told me, the only way you're going to get out on a case like that is you got to learn the law and get yourself out, because no lawyer is going to get you out on a case like that.
So have you helped a lot of people that you've helped that have been severely, unfairly convicted and given overabundance of time?
Yes, I've helped guys that had life sentences. I've won 4 life sentences. I've won cases with guys that had 30 years, guys that had multi-life sentences. I've won 166 cases and 5 Supreme Court cases. And the reason why I was able to win these cases is because I felt that, the witnesses that testified against me, a lot of them did not tell the truth. They testified, they went into the federal witness program. I had lawyers. Once I came to prison, I found out there was a lot of things that the lawyers could have said during the trial that would have helped me that they did not say, or that they did not know to say.
Okay.
And so I studied law, I read law books. I read about judges. I read about lawyers, you know, and I've been studying law and studying law. Every time something new come out, I just, you know, try to comprehend it and study it. And, you know, I read books about Supreme Court justices. I read books about great lawyers, you know, and I just stay abreast on it, working on my case as well, trying to get out, because I started out with 5 life terms in 135 years. And, you know, the only way I'm ever get out of prison is that I have to know the law to get out, because nobody else is going to get me out, not even a lawyer. I have to.
This call is from a federal prison.
And so, you know, I stay working on the case. And now what I do is I have guys that's in prison, and what I do is I teach law classes within the prison.
Okay.
And so I have a law class here at the prison that I'm on, and I teach the other inmates about law. You know, so that they can help themselves. And I've helped a lot of guys out that had 30 years, 20 years. I helped a lot of guys out that had serious sentences. You know?
You know, when I'm, you know, we hear stories about when people are in prison, and, you know, we've hell, one of the people most famous people we've heard about it was with Malcolm X. You know, they get into the libraries and they study, and then Malcolm X, Reuben Hurricane Carter, you know, they study, and, you know, they educate themselves, and even another name that comes to mind, Guy Fisher, you know, they just educate themselves, and, you know, they come out with degrees and become their lawyers, and they learn more about the law than probably some of your attorneys out here right now.
Absolutely.
And it's just intriguing whenever you hear something like that. I mean, they say you got nothing in there but time,
Right.
you know.
And you know, I wanted to document the authenticity of the interview, and we left. When you hear that warning, you hear the boom boom, your call from a federal penitentiary. That was the warning that we had to cut the interview off for 45 minutes and then come back.
Wow.
You know, so it took us to do the entire 2-hour interview. It took us close to 8 to 10 hours. So it was a struggle, you know, physically to keep yourself, and you know what I'm saying, at that high level.
I can certainly imagine that, man. I can
For
certainly
8 to 10
imagine.
hours, yeah. And he used a payphone, and you can hear him. He had enough change that the only way he could do this interview was on a payphone, and you hear the other prisoners in the background.
Yeah.
This is real talk, real live, and this is a real person. And he's a human being.
That is
and
true.
every
Yes.
one of us has done some things that we regret. Maybe his are more extreme than others. But you can find goodness in every person. And during the course of the year and a half that I worked with him to produce this interview, I think we, you know, everybody you interview, Doug, they become part of you. You know,
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah, they become part of your record. I mean, look at the documentary that you did with Bill. That's part of your mantra. You know,
yes.
You went to Bill, but when you did the interview, it really became ingrained inside of you. And
That is true. Did it ever? I mean, that was something that I grown up with. I didn't think that anybody I would be even do. If you were to have told me back in like early 1994, when I was trying to get myself into the media after getting out of college, I'd have thought you were crazy. But you know, but looking at how things just evolved, and looking at all the things that grew out of, I mean, we talk about most people didn't even know what the Build organization was.
Right.
And now it's been, everybody is, and it's been that by itself has been so influential, not just even with the from Build to the Buffalo History Channel with all this, with this multitude of stories. Now this story of Sly Green included now, and it's so many things. I've had so many aspects of Buffalo become a part of me,
Yes.
even when I'm not even living here anymore.
And you learn from every interview.
Yes, you do.
It becomes part of your education. And because it took about 16 months to put this interview together, part of his life became part of my life. And whether you agree or disagree or dislike him, maybe he did something when he was in that life that you don't like, you can't help but admire his fortitude that he's exhibited during the years that he's been locked down, trying to not only fight for his freedom, but he's helped so many others gain their freedom out of the prison industrial complex, which unfairly incarcerates African males in this country. The numbers are just astronomical. And during that process of him trying to fight for another opportunity to do good, he's done a lot of good for other people. And that's a great thing. And you have to admire that type of fortitude, especially when you hear that background. It's absolute chaos.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We left all that there. We didn't try to edit any of that out. It's absolute madness in the background. And he's on a payphone.
Yeah. Well, here's I'm gonna touch on two more parts of this interview, and then like I said, everybody can because it's on your YouTube channel, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be directing you to his channel a little bit later on in the broadcast, but I'm going to touch on two more parts. This is about the false charges and the paid witnesses. We have a clip from that we'll go to right now.
What they did is they called in U.S. prosecutors. They had 4 U.S. prosecutors against me. Mr. Hochul, Mr. Endler, a guy by the name of Mr. Stephenson or Stevenson, and some other guy that I don't know. But 2 of these guys was from Washington. They bring in Washington U.S. prosecutors. They call them organized task force prosecutors when they prosecute major cases. Now, even though they accuse me of being a crime boss, and even though they accuse me of consolidating drug gangs and putting them together and, controlling the city and all this type of stuff, it was made up just to get me indicted. It was made up to get me convicted. They gave me more time than they gave Gotti and the Unabomber put together. They gave Gotti 100 years plus life. They gave the Unabomber 3 lives. They gave me, on the federal case, 4 lives in 110 years. They gave me more time than they gave both of them put together. And then they paid the witnesses to testify against me. Like on the state case, they paid the witness, Mr. Wright, $250,000. I never seen the guy before. Then they paid another guy to get his charges dropped. They put them in the federal witness program. It seems like everybody that testified against me, they went in the federal program and they got some benefit. And I just want to be honest with you, Pat. I sold some drugs, but man, I'm not guilty of selling no $1 billion worth of drugs. I'm not guilty of selling all the drugs that they said. I'm not guilty of 11 extortions, 9 kidnappings, multi-hits, controlling this city, that city, being in charge of 11 captains and 3 underbosses. I mean, they blew the case up, man. They made me bigger than life. That's what they did.
Sly, they accuse you of selling 100 keys a month.
They accused me of selling 100 keys a month. When the judge sentenced me, he held me responsible for 100 keys a month for 5 years. That's over $1 billion.
Mm.
You know?
Did
And
100 keys a month. And when I heard that, Doug, I had to ask. They said you sold 100 keys a month. He said that's $1 billion. He said I'd have retired. You know, he basically told me why. There's no way. He said I couldn't have done it. And then he said, Doug, some of the witnesses he didn't even know them. He said they manufactured evidence. They paid the witnesses. And I know you listened to the organized crime task force U.S. attorneys that prosecuted him. I know you heard a familiar name, and that was Mr. Holtzcomb.
Yeah.
That is the current governor of New York State's husband. Now, he said he was one of the attorneys. It was 4 U.S. attorneys, a task force, and he was adamant that they fabricated evidence just to gain the conviction. They were so determined to convict him that they paid witnesses, and he had some outbursts in court, whereas they removed him from the courtroom.
Yeah, I remember that part. I heard.
Put him in a room, and I don't know if your audience has seen Silence of the Lambs, but that's how he was tied down.
Wow.
Similarly to that. And to get that type of information, as you know, as an interviewer, and I saw your face, you went, wow, just listening to it again, and you've heard the interview before.
Right.
When you think about those things, that's our job, is to try to bring these things to light so that somebody tells the story, so that it better helps some of our young people that are going down the same road, that you don't want to end up in the same situation as where Donald Sly Green is. And he said that throughout the interview.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Yeah. And one last portion we'll touch on here is the topic of the media hype. I'll play this for a little while.
Did they try to prove that, or was it just hype?
They tried to prove it, but it was hype. It was media hype. That's all it was. They tried to prove that, but the judge ended up saying that, yo, I'm giving you 100 keys a month from 1987 all the way to 1992, and gave me 100 keys a month. Accused me of being the boss, and kept saying, oh, if you was going to be a boss, you would have been a good boss of a CEO corporation and things that. I was never a boss.
You were accused. They called you the Godfather.
Yeah, they said that I was the black John Gotti of the city, that I was a black crime boss. That's what they accused me. They said that I consolidated the drug gangs and brought them all together and created a commission within the organization. They charged me with saying that I had 11 captains and 3 underbosses on me. Then they said that I had captains in other cities. You know, they blew the case up.
What was the name of the gang that they said you were running?
They said I was running a L.A. Boys gang. I never heard of no L.A. Boys gang until they arrested me. I never heard of that. I never heard of anything like that until they arrested me. No such thing ever existed. Then they say I was running an organization called The Family. Then they say I was the crime boss of an organization. So they use various names. You know?
None of this ever proved.
No, this wasn't proven at all. No, that was not proven. I'm just being very honest with you.
Now, when you were forced to see the trial from a video room, they said you blew up in the courtroom. Was that reacting to someone that you didn't know?
the reason why I was taken out of trial and put into a bullpen, and I had to watch it from upstairs in a bullpen, because the trial went on for several months. And the reason why is because I had a girlfriend of mine. Her name was Doris.
This call is from a federal prison.
Her name was Doris Parker, and she got up on the stand and she started saying he has so much money. I never seen that much money in my life. This is what she's saying. But I don't know she getting me charged with the Super Kingpin Act. I don't know she getting me charged with RICO Enterprise, because those are some of the elements that you get charged with large sums of money. So I jumped up and I said, Your Honor, she's a lying bitch. Just like that, because those are the words that came out of my mouth, because she's lying. And I felt that, well, damn, how could you jump up there and say this when everything that I've done for you, I never disrespected you, I never crossed you or done nothing like this for you, and you getting up there and you lying for the government to help get me more time. Mm-hmm. And so I jumped up, I said that. Then I had another witness. He testifying, and he's saying that, well, this was an organized crime organization, and I jumped up on him. I said, Johnny's lying, because he wasn't around me in order for him to say the things that he was saying. Mm-hmm. So I became emotionally upset about some of the things that they were saying. Then I had another guy I was close to, and he was accused of being one of the captains of this so-called organization that the government created, and he was up on a stand, and he was testifying, and he was up there smiling like everything was a joke. So I jumped up and I hollered and I screamed on him and threw a water pitcher, because, Pat, I was highly upset, man. I was agitated, man, because they up on the stand, they testifying, and some things that's being said is true, but a lot of things that's being said is not true. So the things that they were saying, some of the things that they were saying that were not true, I reacted to them. I should not have reacted to them like that, but that's how I reacted.
Sly, let me ask you, have you found that some of the people that testified against you were under the employ of the federal government?
Well, some of the people that testified against me, most of them was under the influence of the federal government, and the federal government told them what to say and how to say what they said in order for those charges to stick to me, in order for the elements to meet, in order for the jury to come back with a verdict like they did, to try to prove the elements of a Super Kingpin Act, to try to prove the elements of a RICO Enterprise, to try to prove the elements of a conspiracy. They gave me 4 conspiracies in one case, and to put me on top of the indictment, and said that I'm involved in 4 conspiracies in one case with 32 co-defendants. Mm-hmm. That's impossible, man. That was impossible. So no matter if I was innocent of some of the charges or not, they already had it rigged up so that I would get convicted. And so I got kicked out of trial, and when I got kicked out of trial, I had to watch it from a monitor. But I was strapped down in the chair. The judge did let me stay strapped down in the chair, but I jumped up again because another witness started saying things that I just felt wasn't true. Mm. And they just kicked me out of trial, and I had to watch the trial from a TV monitor upstairs. It's not that. It's just that I was so emotionally upset about how they just got up there and was influenced and manipulated by the government to say the things that they were saying about me, that I reacted in a way that I should have never reacted to.
Sly, we're going to take a short break. Be right back here on a special edition of The Message here with Donald Sly Green. Listening to him and hearing his story. We'll be back after this short break.
Well, that's all we're going to share for you right here in this broadcast. You can go to Pat Freeman's YouTube channel and check out both. It's done in 2 parts. Those were the clips from part 1, and I think we've given you enough to give you some information and context. There is a part 2 that you also need to listen to on your own. But what's your YouTube channel, Pat?
It's the Mighty O'ba. That's the name of it, the Mighty O'ba.
Mighty O'ba.
And the YouTube channel, all of my videos and everything else I'm doing is up there.
Okay, well, that's we wanted to and I'll just say this on behalf of this platform, the Buffalo History Channel. We don't just focus on one aspect of history. I mean, we try to focus on as many aspects as we can. I mean, we do crime stories as well. I mean, we had the video on the Buffalo street gangs and the New Visions Unlimited.
Right.
So we try to touch different areas. So I mean, that too is a part of Buffalo history. We've also had pieces on the 22 caliber killer, which we'll be expanding on in the not too distant future. So we have featurettes about it now, but there is plans to do that. So we do things we do things mostly for educational purpose. We don't do it for entertainment. We do it for education, and that's the purpose of the Buffalo History Channel, is to educate on all aspects of Buffalo's history.
Absolutely. And he is that's probably the biggest trial that ever occurred here. I mean, he was brought to downtown. He was basically brought to Buffalo by military helicopter and military escort.
Right.
It was probably the biggest trial that this city has ever seen. Maybe one of the biggest trials in the country. And it is a learning experience. I think it's an experience that can help people, especially our young people that are going down the wrong road. And we have a lot of self-violence in our community that maybe if they hear his story, it can help change lives and help turn around people. And that's our purpose. And I think that's the purpose of education. I do understand there are people that are negatively affected by some of the people that you would interview in a situation like this.
True.
And, I appreciate that, but also appreciate that we as journalists, our job is to bring out a story, because the story must be told, good, bad, or indifferent. I think if you tell a story like this, that it helps those move forward and help those that may be stuck in a situation that's going south, or they're going towards prison or death, that it might turn around lives. And that's the reason we do interviews of this nature. I appreciate all the work that you've done, especially with the gangs. Maybe that helped some of our young people not get involved in that, and maybe turn many of them around. And that's our purpose for bringing that story to light. And that was Sly's purpose for doing the interview.
Yeah.
He wanted to help change lives. And his whole goal, he told me, is that when I get out, I just want to help our young people not go down the same road that I've gone down. And he is adamant that he is eventually going to be released because he feels that he has, right now, he's served over 30 years. And he was basically convicted on the Kingpin and RICO law violations. And he feels that during his struggle, he is going to win, and he will be able to return, but he wants to return to try to correct some of the things that he felt that he played a role in going wrong, especially in the city of Buffalo. And that to me is a good thing.
I mean, who knows? I mean, you look throughout the past few years, I mean, other people have been released that have served long sentences. Freeway Ricky Ross been released. Guy Fisher has been released. So it wouldn't be We wouldn't be too much of a stretch, so you never know. Only time will tell.
But what, my thing is too, Doug, is that what good is he doing in the Florida pen? You could put him in a halfway house here in the city of Buffalo and put him to work in the community, working with these young people that are going down bad roads. You've got a correction center right there on East Ferry. Rather than let those kids be in a detention center, they make rap songs about Sly Green to this day.
Yes, they do.
They talk about his life. And he told me that he would rather work in the community to try to help young people get back on the right road. And I think young people would listen to a person like Sly Green because he's held in such high street regard. You and me.
That's what he thinks. That's what he thinks about it when he hears that. Man.
Yes. And he thinks that he could do more good now than bad compared to his day in the street. And what good is he doing in Florida federal pen? He could do it in the city of Buffalo and help stop some of the street violence and drug trade. They would listen to Sly Green. And that to me, if you're going to keep him under some form of incarceration, after 30 years of federal prison time, Sly has got to be in his 60s now. Why not bring him back and put him to work in the communities that he might have damaged during his youth? Why not put him back to work now, whereas he could probably help some of these young people who are shooting each other? We have guns running rampant, drugs running rampant in our communities. Why not bring back a Sly Green and put him to work in our community from a halfway house where he's monitored? You could put him on an ankle monitor, but at least bring some good back to his life and allow him to work in the community. You've got to support him in a federal penitentiary. I think it would do better for the community for him to go back to work in the community to help some of our young people.
Absolutely. And time will certainly tell. But Pat, it was certainly a pleasure to have you with us once again. I think this makes about 3 times that you've been with us on the Buffalo.
Right. And we got to do part 2 because it's even more information.
Okay.
That we need to look at. That's just the part 1.
Right.
And I hope you get a good response and we do part 2 sometime in the not too near distant future.
Absolutely. So once again, everybody can go to the Mighty O'ba on YouTube and check out listen to both parts of the interview in their entirety and get yourself educated on the story of Sly Green. Pat, thanks for being a part of the Buffalo History Channel.
Thanks for having me, Doug. My pleasure.
All right.
My good friend, one of the best filmmakers in the world, Doug Ruffin, he's on.
Oh, okay. How you doing, Mr. Ruffin?
Sly Green, Doug Ruffin, how you doing, man?
All right, all right.